a lot of uncharacteristic errors for Cal, but with MJ, like the face of like a pardon.
Excuse me?
What was this like? If a Karen went to a restaurant and got seated at a table where there was too much air conditioning blowing right on her, she would wish she could come up with the face that MJ Frazier made after she fell on beam.
Remember, the show is PG-13, so you might hear a naughty word or two.
It's March Madness over at Tumble Track. 10% off all kinds of mats and 10% off spring floors. Visit Tumble Track at TUMBLTRAK, tumbletrack.com. Train smart. Spencer.
Yeah.
Russia is having another friendship games, like Olomouc, but it's going to be in Moscow this time. It's happening. We had a 40 watch this weekend, Spencer. It was so exciting. Conference championships had, to me, one big surprise. We're going to go through all the details and the judging, of course. And we have a lot of Gym Turnet news, and the regionals brackets are out. We're going to tell you who got screwed and who's going to be fine. That's basically what's happening today. It's March 25th, and welcome to the #1 gymnastics podcast in the galaxy. I'm Jessica, and I'm here with Spencer from the Balance Beam Situation. Behind the Scenes returns this week instead of College and Cocktails at our regularly scheduled Friday afternoon time. So Friday at noon Pacific. So you can take your lunch break with us and discuss gymnastics and all the things. So Behind the Scenes, Friday, noon Pacific. Now, let us discuss the regionals brackets because we're recording on Monday. Regionals brackets just happened. So, before we get to regionals brackets, Spencer.
Okay. I'm waiting with bated breath.
Okay, so this past weekend was Kathy Johnson's last meet. This was her last commentary at the ACC Championships with her partner forever, Bart Konnor. So we thought we'd put together a little special message for her to like thank her for all her years of commentating. So Dr. Brooke has put together a little link that we'll put in the show notes. If you want to send her a message, we'll make a little book and, make it fancy and send her a lot of messages from, listeners and how she's affected you, what you, all the things you want to say to Kathy Johnson. We'll put it together and deliver it. So link in the show notes for you guys. All right, Spencer. Do you have a rage meter to start this episode?
Oh, did you hear about my rage meter? About my fury at all of the typos in the regional championships selection show? The NCAA, they want to make it a thing. Every year we laugh about, they do this selection show to announce the 36 teams and all the individuals that qualify to regionals. And we're like, that could have been an email though, right? Like you could have just sent us what the draw is. We don't need like a hoopla, the 30-minute announcement, but they do it because, things. And then they misspelled all of the gymnast names, like all of the individual qualifiers. There were so many mistakes. It was like, what? Just don't do it then. This is totally unnecessary. If you're not going to put the time into it, if you're going to talk about how Karina Monoz, Monoz from Iowa.
Oh my God, I didn't even know who you meant. I was like, what? Yeah. Until you said Iowa. Munoz?
Oh. Yeah, Karina Munoz was Karina Monoz, because maybe they thought that's why Iowa didn't make it as a team this year, because they all got monos. But so that was my favorite one. But I was like, this is the catastrophic mess. So that was
this NCAA is only a $13 billion revenue organization. $13 billion they took in revenue in 2022. So I don't know why, it would be hard for them to spell. I mean, surely they can afford an AI spell check. I mean, it's about college and learning. So maybe it was a student that input it. I mean, should we expect the best from an organization with that much money? We should. But anywho, Spencer, what I want to know from you is, besides all the spelling errors, who got royally screwed versus totally screwed in the regionals?
Is royally worse than totally?
Yes.
Like royally. Royally screwed award, I would say, goes to Michigan State, because Michigan State had to. The whole issue is we had host conflicts. So everyone's supposed to be put into a regional based on their ranking, the top 16 teams. They couldn't be because we had Florida and Arkansas would be together and they're both hosts, and Cal and Michigan would be together and they're both hosts. So things had to change. Michigan State got the royally screwed because their quality this season, their scores, their rankings should have allowed them to avoid being put into the Florida-Utah regional, which is what they got. But they got demoted 2 ranking spots into Florida and Utah, which is an extremely difficult regional because only 2 teams are going to make it. So if I'm Michigan State, I'm a little pissed about that. But also if I'm Florida and Utah, I am, because Michigan State just won the Big Ten championship and they scored a 197.6, and they're pretty, like, they're at the very least going to keep Florida and Utah honest. Like, you have to bring it. You have to be good. You have to be on. Otherwise, Michigan State's going to take your spot. And Missouri, because Missouri is also in that regional. But yeah, if I'm Michigan State, I'm like, this is stupid and I hate it, and I'm going to throw some chalk out a window.
I mean, here's the thing though, Spencer, they did bring their Coven capes out in their intro video for this, and they won their conference championship. So you never know, they might march out in capes. Who needs warm-ups when you have capes? March out in their capes, cast their spell of artistry, and be one of the top 2 teams out of that region. I'm just saying.
Very possible. Very
never
possible.
Underestimate the power of witchery. All right.
Okay, so in the classification of totally screwed,
yes.
I would then say Denver, because while Denver didn't have their ranking changed, their seeding changed like Michigan State did, UCLA got their ranking changed, and now they're in with Denver and Cal. And Denver's like, wait, we got our almost a 198 against Oklahoma at Big 12s. Our ranking moved up. We're supposed to have this lovely draw now. And they're like, no, you get UCLA, who also got a high 197 at their conference championships, in with Cal, who's hosting and is the number 3 team. So that's also going to be an intense one. 3 of the top 9 teams are in that one regional. So we'll preview all of the regionals next week, but like, screwed Michigan State, Denver, and I would say Minnesota also, because the big surprise for me was the placement of Oregon State. They were unseeded. They got geographically, in quotes, placed in the Arkansas regional because, the closest
Oregon
geographically to Oregon would be Arkansas, obviously.
Not Cal,
so they didn't go to the Cal regional, which you would have thought that would be the closest one. They're in Arkansas, so now Minnesota and LSU have to deal with them. So that one is an unexpected
I have to
draw.
deal with them. They have to deal with them. I like how you
if
put
you're
it.
a top seed and you suddenly see like an Oregon State going around, you're like, well, now I have to deal with Jade Carey. I have to deal with a double layout full and a 10 on floor. And Maya Houghton's like, I can deal with a 10 on floor. I'm going to get a 10 on floor. And then LSU is like, we're all going to get 10s on floors. And that's going to be, the floor semifinal. But a tougher road for Minnesota than I think I would have anticipated just based on the rankings.
So who got absolutely blessed? All the blessings of Protonova upon them.
All the blessings of Protonova upon Arkansas for having the Nostradamus level foresight to host regionals this year, because they are the team that should have been in that Florida-Utah regional where Michigan State has to go. That's supposed to be Arkansas, but they're hosting, so they couldn't be. So they got super promoted. Arkansas and Michigan, they were like, see you later. Sucks to be you. We're getting promoted out of this regional. We're going to get a better one. It's still tough with LSU.
You just called it a regional on accident, and I think that's what we need to call these from now on. It's a regional.
I had some regionals this morning. Arkansas is still with LSU and Kentucky, which is challenging, but they'll look at this and say, okay, our last home meet, we got a 198. Kentucky just got a 197.6 at SECs. I think LSU and Kentucky are the favorites there, but Arkansas is going to look at that and be like, well, we can do this.
Yep.
See how it goes, but it's very possible.
Who got the most blessed as a fan base?
Oklahoma fans, because their team is perfect and got a 10 for every skill. But I would say like the neutrals as a fan base got very much blessed, because these are the most interesting regionals, competitive regionals we've seen, and there are no obvious ones. Like the Florida-Utah group had the potential to be kind of a snoozer, I think. often the 4 or 5 regional is, where, Florida and Utah are way better than everyone else. And, they have to hit, but like they maybe don't need their very best meet and they can still advance and it's fine. But with MSU there, sucks to be them. But with MSU there, that's not a guarantee that Florida and Utah are going to get out of that. That's tough. They have a challenge and everyone has been given a challenge. So that's really exciting. Like even like if the only team, like only Oklahoma, I think, can feel like we could probably count a fall and still make nationals. I don't think any other team can feel that way, which is exciting.
Yep. I, of course, am very excited about the individuals, but we can talk more.
So have you heard about this? So I didn't do like what the individuals were supposed to be, because like NCAA is all about the team. But Jenna from College Gym News was like, oh, they did the tie breaks wrong for announcing the qualifiers. So we'll see what happens with this. But I was seeing that was another thing I hadn't even anticipated. That like the tie breaks that are written in like the championships manual are not who they announced the qualifiers, and there was a couple different people. So that's maybe its whole other own thing that we will continue.
No, because watch. Kendall Whitman has to go. But like Kendall Whitman's not one of the tie breaks, right?
Kendall Whitman's, oh my God, Jessica. Kendall
Whitman. I was like, as long as Kendall Whitman, well, she's going for all around, so she should be totally fine. But I was like, as long as she is our floor national champion, then I'm fine with that. But I want to talk about more about that later. Okay, is there anything else important that you need to tell us about regionals?
No, we'll preview it next week. We'll go through, we'll talk about it, but I just wanted to get it off my chest that there were a lot of misspellings and some teams got screwed. But I feel good now, and we can talk about whatever you are interested in talking about instead.
So NCAA.com, they do a little work, even though they can't spell and can't break ties correctly. They did put up a picture of a bracket. So you can go to NCAA.com and download your bracket and play along that way. But I want to talk about conference championships. But before we talk about conference championships, oh my God, because I have so much to say about conference championships, you guys.
Yeah.
I do want to mention that our live show at NCAA's is happening April 19th, and tickets are on sale now. So you can get your tickets, Spencer, or you can just come be on the show.
I have to buy a ticket now?
No, you can come. I'll bring you. Okay. So, you can meet Spencer in person. You can meet Spencer in person if you come to this. But we have a secret special guest. We have done this twice before. And the secret guest means we do not announce the guest until the guest walks out on stage. That's how you know who it is. So we did this once before with Alicia Sacramone. Someone almost fainted. We did it with Kennedy Baker. The joy of this. So you will meet the special guest the day of. But I would say if you love gymnastics, you love college gymnastics, you have been a gymnastics fan for a long time, you love Olympians, you will want to get the special meet and greet ticket and get your poster and have your special personal one-on-one time with our special guest. Spencer, do you agree? Is that what you think that's what the people should do?
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, you've got to stop hinting because you might as well just tell people.
Spencer, basically the math works out to this being like a super good deal if you're a Club Gym Nerd member, right?
Yes. Would you like me to do the math? Sure. So a $5 discount on virtual tickets expires on Wednesday. So, if you're listening to this on Thursday, I'm sorry. But, if you're listening to it before Thursday, you can still get it on Wednesday. And you can, if you've bought your virtual season pass, your special deal, 4 shows for the price of 3, and you decide, I'm going to be in Fort Worth for championships, you can upgrade your virtual season pass ticket to an in-person ticket at a discount.
And the live shows are so fun, you guys. I'm so excited about this. We have a new Fantasy Gymnastics YouTube show to go along with our Fantasy Gymnastics League. And you know what I love is there's a bunch of cool graphics in this. So if you're a winner, like our week 12 winner who was compulsory popcorn, or the league winner who is getting a commissioned episode, league winner, double front, congratulations. You get an entire commissioned episode. You get to make us talk about anything tangentially gymnastics related for an hour and a half, double front. You have won.
Is
congratulations.
It gonna be a commission about double fronts? and
Oh my
how
God, I
who has
hope
the
it
best
is.
double friends.
Then we can talk even more about Kendall Whitman. George Washington, you guys, she's my theme of the week. You know what's crazy? I had so many themes already written in the notes to talk about with her. And then my friend is moving to DC and she sat next to Kendall Whitman's boyfriend on the plane because he's a wrestler and he was coming back from championships. And she was texting me, do you know who Kendall Whitman? And I was like, do I know who Kendall Whitman? I texted my notes. Look at my notes for this week. Do I know who she is? So anyway, shout out to the power couple, wrestler and gymnast. You guys, it's the perfect pairing. Spencer. Okay. Also, we're doing a thingy game for fantasy.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we're doing a thingy game for regionals. Yeah.
Yes.
Details coming soon, but we're going to have a specific NCAA regionals fantasy game and one for championships. Hold on. Wait for it.
Yes. Okay, now for the important news.
Yeah.
Besides live show, Russia is having another friendship games. We are getting a second Olomouc. We had an episode last week where an athlete talked all about what it was like to be told she's not going to the Olympics and then go to Olomouc instead, which is the friendship games, the 1984 that the Soviet Union did to like, we're boycotting, but hey, we'll have an alternative games. And they had like Most Panova competed for gymnastics in it. So, anywho, they're doing it again. So this was announced last May, 2023, but it was like, is it really going to happen? But now I saw an email that said that federations, Russia has been reaching out to federations in the US to invite athletes to compete at this. No word yet if any gymnasts from the US have been invited. But I was encouraged to see that USA Gymnastics did let all the gymnasts know, like, hey, just FYI, like, we won't be doing this. And also, the State Department,
this, right?
we won't. USA Gymnastics will not be doing the friendship games. They'll not.
I couldn't hear, and I was like, just FYI, we're gonna go. I was like, I don't think that's right.
No, we're sending Simone. She's excited. No,
she was like, absolutely not.
But they also said, like, the State Department has ruled Russia as a do not travel country. But I just feel like my first thought with Russia, and it's my dream to always go to Russia. Like I was supposed to go for this like friendship exchange thing in high school, but then the coup happened. So we literally our whole trip was canceled. It was my lifelong dream. Anyway, I'm obsessed with Russia. So I totally want to go there. I totally understand. But also Brittany Griner. Like she just had a little boop of something on her and she ended up in prison for a very long time in Russia. So I would be scared shitless to go there right now. But how do you think the Gymternet will perceive athletes who do go and compete? Like there's a lot of prominent athletes who regularly like all of Nikita Nagorny's posts on Instagram. How do you think that will be received? Friendshiply or negatively?
No, I think not friendshiply. It will be interesting to see. I think it's a different situation than in terms of gymnastics, focusing on gymnastics specifically, than in 1984, because the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union in gymnastics. And if the Soviet women's team had gone to the 84 Olympics, they obviously would have won. If this just ends up being, the Russian gymnasts are competing here, and it's not really different than Russian championships, then I don't think it would have necessarily the impact that, or the significance in gymnastics lore and history that the first friendship games has.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not the same situation. But anyway.
I can't imagine that many federations, like the national gymnastics federations, would send athletes. It would be more federations where the individuals can do whatever they want, like smaller federations where it's like, oh, you can do whatever you want, that might go, but it could also just be the Russian athletes.
I mean, I can see like what happened in the past where the countries that border Russia and are, in the past, it was like if you border the Soviet Union and we were terrified of them and everyone had to learn Russian and, you followed them politically, that maybe there'll be some pressure for that. I mean, Chusa will probably go. She always does like, what's his name show
the
Nemov show. She grew up, it's just part of the Soviet team. But yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens. But it's happening, you guys. So, conference championships happened this weekend. We have a lot to discuss. Starting with freaking Oklahoma, because I literally typed in my notes 199 as the score because I thought it was 100% going to happen. They were going to get a 199. So did they get a 199? No, but did they break the highest score record ever? Yes.
Yeah.
Spencer, tell us.
I didn't think this was going to happen this year. I mean, we've been closing in, but Oklahoma scored a 198.95, which is the highest score any team has ever done, ever. Because, when they go to 4 judges for the championship season, the scores all get lower. Oklahoma, 198.95. That's an average per counting routine of 9.948. So basically, 9.95 is a 199. So if you get a 9925, Oklahoma's like, try harder. Do better. Get out of the lineup. This is not this garbage is not something we can count. You had a deduction. Unacceptable.
And this is like the thing we've been saying all season is like now you need an average of 99995, really 995 to be at the top, where it used to be a 985 was like, okay, you can be in the conversation, and now it's a 995. So that average of 9948, it's just like freaking nuts. But I mean, their gymnastics is that much better than most of the country, I would say. Deserved. With caveats, of course, which we will discuss because we are bringing back corrupt or correct this week for obvious reasons.
Yeah. So do you think this is getting back to a conversation we've had many times, but is this, all right, Oklahoma has broken the code and it has to be more discerning so we can separate athletes and not just be like, oh, you didn't stick, so you got a 995, or you stuck, so you got a 10.
Yeah, the code has to be fixed. The code is a huge, huge problem. And I think one of the things that I talked to Hughes Mercier, who is the person that's in charge of the JET program, the evaluation for the FIG, we both agreed is that the code is the first thing that he said he would start with to fix the problems in college judging, because there's too much range. It's a deduction or it's not. It's either a half a tenth, or it's either 3/10, or it's not all, could be range. You could take up to 3/10. No, there's a range and these are deductions and that's it. So yeah, I think the code has been broken, and it's even more obvious that it's brokenness. Even though I do think 100% that Oklahoma deserves to win, I do not agree that the ranking, as long as the ranking's right, everything is fine. But I also think, is it any wonder they broke the record? No. Did they deserve to break the record? Yes. They're fantastic.
Do you think this year's Oklahoma roster is the best team you've ever seen in college gymnastics? He asked as an impossible question that he himself would not answer.
No. No. Yeah, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. Yeah. I don't. I think the early 2000s, when all the Olympians first came in, that was the best gymnastics. And they were doing, I mean, the level of difficulty, full twisting double layouts were done back then. Double twisting Yurchenkos. Yeah. How long ago was that? Was that 20 years ago? 25 years ago?
20 plus, yeah. But because I agree with what you're saying in my memories, but I also feel like if I went back and watched like a 2001 UCLA championship, I would be like, oh my God, these leaps are horrible. But we always have that nostalgic, like, oh, the 80s, the form, and then you watch it and you're like, nope, the form is better now. Yuck.
We went back and watched 92. I was like, my whole life is ruined. They can't even do a split.
My life is a lie. So I do feel like there's some degree of that. And then it's also like, scoring is crazy. But
we should do that. Maybe that is what Double Front will commission, is watch the 2004 NCAA championships versus Oklahoma now and compare split to split, flip to flip, were the deductions taken in the air? Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be a good commissioned episode.
This Oklahoma performance was also, Jessica, the 250th 198 plus score in NCAA history, in case you were keeping track, which of course I was.
Yeah, I'm gonna mark it. I have a giant like check mark thing on my wall of
where
but
you're
yeah, like
counting how many 198s there have been, because I know you focus so highly on the scores.
I do. Some people measure like their pets or their nieces and nephews, their children on the wall, but for me, it's just one of the highest scores in check marks. So did 90% of those happen this year?
We had many fewer when I started counting all the 198s. I think there were like 100 when I started counting a couple years ago, and now we're at 250.
I do want to talk about the scoring. It was so exciting to watch Jordan Bowers go for her 40. We unfortunately only got 2 10s in a row from her. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then
only
there
two
was
10s in a row, Jordan Bowers. Get it together.
Oh my God. And then there wasn't a 10, and then she got a 10 on her last event. But it was very exciting that there was a perfect 20. Was her vault a 10? Obviously not. We'll discuss that later. But was it a great stuck landing? Yes. Is she a fantastic athlete? Yes. Is she super friggin' consistent? Yes. Now
So
she'll only bring back that enhancement point.
39.925 all around, which Haley Bryant also got this year, tied for 4th all time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel
Big
like
score.
199 and this confirmed to me that like 199 and a perfect 40 are minutes away.
Yeah. It's happened before. So
well, a perfect 40 has, yeah.
A perfect 40 has happened before. So, and that was a long ago. So in the 80s, wasn't it? Or 90s that happened?
No, 90s.
90s.
We were 80s. We weren't even doing 10s. Late 80s, Kelly Garrison got the first ever college 10.
Well, it's because I don't know if you remember the NCAA hadn't invented women yet. They didn't even have their own NCAA championship.
Yeah, and like 9.5 was a really good score. Also,
oh, the good old days.
The good old days. Yeah.
How many 10s have there been so far this season?
80 perfections over the last several weeks. So, do you think we're going to break the 10s record this year? 10s record is 98 from 2004. Last season was 84. I think we're blowing past last season.
Based on how this postseason is going so far, so why we talk about the postseason because there's more judges. So you went from 2 judges per event, now there's 4 judges per event, so that makes it harder to get a 10 because you take the boopity boop and then you average it, and so theoretically, yes, that's what happens. So, based on the scores at conference championships, this is the first postseason meet. Yes, I think we could definitely get. How many is that? That's 10.
18 more high, 19 to break the record.
Yeah, 19 10s. I think that's super feasible.
Yeah, it's hardest at nationals unless you're Trinity, but Trinity's not competing this year. So that's why we thought, no Trinity this year, no Jordan Childs this year, no Kayla DiCello this year, etc. We were like, I don't know. Maybe there won't be as many 10-worthy routines. And the judges were like, actually, we can find 10s wherever we want to.
I want to talk about some more statistics because obviously, I love statistics, Spencer, and I'm
very impressed by everything that's been happening so far.
I know. I was like, I'm so excited to talk to Spencer about statistics. But first, I want to talk about something you guys may have noticed at the Michigan regional, which was that the bunch of scores were wrong. It was Michigan, right? What's it called? Big 10, Big 12?
Michigan State was hosting the Big 10s. This was the thing because that first rotation of the first session of Big 10s where I was like, that was one of the only things going on. Things weren't super busy. So I was like, paying attention to the scores. And thankfully on Vertius, one of the things I like about it is we can see the start values that the judges give, which is also maybe helps transparency, but also helps you see like, they do not have, not just like, I saw a flex foot from my angle and I didn't see it from my angle. It's like, you have very different start values. But thankfully, my theory about how Maryland's opening beam rotation and the wild ranges was in large part, many of them, an scoring entry issue rather than the judges actually gave these scores issues. So that first rotation, I was like, most of the Maryland beam routines had a range of like 9.6 to 9.9. And I was like, okay, those are really different scores. We have some serious issues. I think at least one of them stood. It was a 9.6 to 9.9 range, but other ones, there was a score entry thing with Verdius that they had to resolve. And, so
yeah, and it wasn't a Verdius problem, just so you know. It was there was a problem with the inputting of the scores.
It's a human error.
It's a human error was the problem. And I remember reminding everybody, if you're not familiar with Verdius, I feel like I talk about it all the time, but I love the Verdius platform. It makes it easier to see all the scores constantly while you're watching the meets and see where everybody's ranking while you're watching, instead of being like, I don't know what's going on. Except I will say that SEC Network had it up on the screen to the side the whole meet.
They were like score tower.
I know. They were like, oh, Verdius is beating us. We should try to do what Verdius is doing. So anyway, it's spelled Virtius, which your spell check will try to change to many other words, but it is Vertius with an I. Okay. Is it time to talk about my beloved Kendall Whitman?
Is it time? You've talked about her 3 times already. Yeah. What do you want to say? You love her?
Yes. I just want to say, it's interesting when people go to the George Washington meets, they're like, so tell me about Kendall Whitman. And I was like, watch her floor. That's what you need to know about Kendall Whitman. Okay. She does a handspring double front that is so enormous. Like when we talk about having really great conditioning, and when I always say there's no excuse for poor conditioning, which Spencer was like, oh, someone was hurt, so their conditioning is not as good. No, that's no reason. Your arms work. You can do, oh my God, her handspring double front stuck, you guys. Yeah, she cowboys, but we know what happens in the air doesn't count in the air. It's such an athletic routine. And by that, I mean, she does lots of bouncy acrobatic things. Like this is the kind of routine they should be trying to put together for Jade Carey that would actually work for her. And she wouldn't have to dance so much. I mean, there's lots of like flippy things. When I always talk about the things that the kids will want to run into the hallway and try on their own or try in their backyard or whatever, like the front handspring to your knees, bounce forwards. It's all that like fun things that you used to see in like the 90s routines. She does her like straddle half turn to a Shushanova. It's just like so fun, and her form is so good. Her legs are so straight. Her toes are so pointed. It's so flippy. Oh, I just love it. She's only tied. This is my question, Spencer. I don't understand this. Mm-hmm. She's only tied for 27th by NQS with a 9.935 for floor. What the hell?
That's a really good
she
score.
sticks all her passes. That's not high enough.
A really good score.
No, I don't accept this. A 9.935 is below the Oklahoma average, and I reject that on Kendall Whitman's behalf and the entire school of George Washington. I mean, her front passes are all stuck, you guys. Her front passes. You know how many front passes we see that are like, I'm flying into a fern, but I'm going to do a stag jump instead. Or I'm going to lunge dramatically and cover this up with a half turn like I meant to do it. The front passes are stuck. She is like the Raina Worley of back passes, but for front tumbling. I love her gymnastics so much. And I just feel like I have not exuded enthusiasm enough about her this season. So I just wanted to make sure that I said I registered my rage-o-meter about her only being ranked 27th, because she should be, in my opinion, the NCAA floor champion, along obviously with Brooklyn Moores. They should tie. Only front tumblers are allowed to win.
You've given a good for people going to the Arkansas Regional. Kendall Whitman is qualified as an all-arounder, so you've given a good recommendation for if you're going to the Arkansas Regional. Who are you making a sign about, bringing pom-poms about, or whatever people who like joy do?
Yes,
I don't really know. I'm not familiar, but that kind of thing.
Make a Kendall Whitman sign. Just hold it up. Or just be like, double front. Just make a sign that says that. Yeah. I just love her. Okay, so conference championships happened. Basically, these don't mean... These mean... I was about to say, these don't mean... These do count for your NQS, but bubbity bub,
Yeah.
Effectively, they're
It's
bragging
conference
rights.
pride. It's school pride, Jessica. You are
You
the
know what?
champion of the schools that are near you.
You know what's so
sometimes.
funny is I'm just like, oh, these don't mean anything, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, if I got 10th place on Beam because I got a 9, it was like the greatest moment in my entire life. Or if I won one match in wrestling, I was like, yes, I finally won a match. So like, I'm very happy for the athletes, but just like, I mean, the big picture.
You don't
If you're
have
here
to
to
pretend
win.
you're them. You don't have. Yeah, the athletes can be very happy. I don't have to pretend I'm one of them.
I know, but I just want to say I'm so happy
Yeah.
that you guys are happy. But in the big picture, meh, these mean nothing. Okay, so
in terms of Michigan State, I think it was the win in terms
Yes.
of teams where the winning was the biggest deal for them. I would say
Yes.
Michigan State also hosted, which is in terms of big conferences unusual because Pac-12s will do fake Utah host where it's not actually at the school, so it's a neutral site. It's just at Utah, and SECs were in New Orleans this year, so they're not the school's typical venue or a neutral site. Whereas you had Michigan State winning in front of the Michigan State super fan excitementies.
overalls.
Did that make a difference to you?
I mean, if Utah's in Salt Lake City and LSU is in wherever 5 minutes away, then I think it's basically
This one was in New Orleans, so it was farther away. They also have that other one in Baton Rouge,
That was
but
a
this
little
was
farther, that's
LSU was the closest team because it was in state, but it was not a local meet.
Yeah. I don't think it really makes that big of a difference in conference championships. It's an advantage because you don't have to travel, but that's really the only advantage. Like fans will, the hardcore college fans will be like, it's an outrage, it's corruption. And, if they treated
because
people...
we would never say things like it's an outrage, it's corruption on this show.
Never until we get to corrupt or correct. But I don't think in this case, this is the thing. I don't think Michigan State beating Michigan was a surprise.
Michigan's meant it less about the results and more about the mood, fan enthusiasm, a better show, a better event when you're on campus versus being at a neutral site.
I support the Greg Marsden position that having things on campus is always better and keep the money in the school. The students are the ones that pay for this stuff. So with their crazy fees, so they should get the advantage of watching these meets and not have to travel to another site. That's what I think. Okay, what was in terms of surprises?
Yeah.
Michigan State beating Michigan, not a surprise to me.
Well, Michigan State it wasn't just a dual meet with Michigan State and Michigan. They had to beat Minnesota.
They did.
I feel like you're doing Minnesota erasure and it's uncharacteristic for you because of how much you love the team.
I do love that team so much. And we did hear from people that were there were like, I feel like Minnesota should have won over Michigan State. But I feel like rankings wise, this wasn't really a surprise.
No. They were the number 1 seed going in. LSU was the number 1 seed going into SECs. They won. The surprise then would be Cal was the number 1 seed at Pac-12. So it did not have a great competition. Utah won instead, although I would not characterize Utah winning the Pac-12 championship in Salt Lake City as like a surprise. That's not that what I wouldn't say that was a surprise to me, even though they were not the top seed. Like that was, Utah won. I think Cal and Florida both not being close to winning, like not even really, like they were out of it but halfway through the meet. I think both of them were out of it. And that was the surprise to me. With Cal, maybe less so because it's their first time really ever being a favorite in a championship meet. And I think, we're throwing in, ascribing mental states when you have no idea what someone's actually thinking or how it
Yes.
affects their performances.
What is it called when you assign feelings to like an inanimate object or animals? What is that called?
Are you anthropomorphizing?
Or anthropomorphizing the bear
You can't
head.
anthropomorphize a person, though. They're already a person.
But I can anthropomorphize their stick crown, which is a giant fluffy bear
The
head.
giant bear head that
And
they
I'm going to
found.
say
Yeah.
the bear head was nervous because there were expectations for the bear head. And so perhaps that is why.
I mean, it definitely is. I think you can say it's a difference between, hey guys, we could win this versus like, oh, we are supposed to win this.
Yeah.
And I think Cal probably would have thought they should/supposed to win, which was a very reasonable expectation. If they had hit their normal meet that we have seen several times this year, their normal good one, I think they would have won that competition. But they didn't hit that meet that day.
And the weird thing about this, so I do want to talk about, I want to talk about what happened with eMjae because she fell and she looked like over to Liz, the head coach, like, what do you do when this happens? Because this has never happened to me. And it was one of my favorite moments of the meet.
Yeah.
But
she was she was confused/offended. That was the defining moment image characteristic of conference championships for me, because there were a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes for Cal. These weren't a lot of things we didn't expect, not just eMjae Frazier falling on beam, but falling on a switch ring where she was on. Like it wasn't like her feet were off or something. It was then like an adjustment afterward, and suddenly I'm wobbling and I'm falling and I'm confused. But like Maile O'Keefe is usually great with her landings and her double fall off beam. She was bouncing all over the place. Andy, like a double tuck off bars is so easy for Andy Lee, and she was like, I didn't stick this? What is happening? So
yeah,
a lot of uncharacteristic errors for Cal, but with eMjae, like the face of like, a pardon?
Excuse me?
What was this like? If a Karen went to a restaurant and got seated at a table where there was too much air conditioning blowing right on her, she would wish she could come up with the face that eMjae Frazier made after she fell on beam. Like, it was just so like, do you know who I am? How could I possibly be treated this way by a balance beam? It was great. It was like probably my favorite moment.
Oh my God, I loved it so much. I wanted to talk about this fall specifically because eMjae got a 9.4. And I think, yes. And I think one of our judge listeners wrote in about this, and we've talked about it before. But I think the reason she got a 9.4 was because I want to talk about the deductions for a second, and that there is such a thing as a perfect fall. And basically, a perfect fall is you fell, so none of the crazy stuff that happened, like eMjae Frazier bending over, doing like half a bridge and waving her arms like crazy and arms going up and down, none of that was deducted. And there's a reason for that. So I want to talk about the beginning of the routine first, where she did a front aerial and then had a balance check where a leg came up. It didn't come up by her face. It wasn't 90 degrees, but enough that it was for sure a 10th of a deduction minimum, maybe 2/10, because if you look at the deductions, additional movements to maintain balance up to 3/10, additional trunk movements to maintain balance, for sure she had trunk movement because she almost did a full bridge up to 2/10. Arm swings, there was many, 1, 2, 3, 4. If all she did was this, trying to stay on and then stayed on, all of those deductions would apply. All of those up to bent arms, arm swing, additional trunk movement.
That would have been a 0.3 wobble, which is the biggest deduction you can have for a wobble, because she wobbled like 94 times.
Right. But a fall is only a half a tenth, half a point. And specifically, the code says, do not deduct for balance errors leading to the fall. So this is why her score was what it was, and not, 3/10 off for a bunch of wobbles in addition to the fall and the wobble after the aerial. Just to go through what a perfect fall can be. So you can't, if that had been her only error, she might have gotten a 9.5, which is a perfect fall score.
Because she fell on a switch ring, which it was not connected to anything, so she didn't lose connection bonus for the fall. she has the best switch ring in college gymnastics, so you don't have execution deductions for the college code the way others might. And she landed, feet on the beam like we were talking about. It was a surprising fall where she completed that skill done on the beam, fine, and then it was like, oh no, I've fallen.
I want to go back to talking about Cal for a second because this was such a surprise. They've been so even, and as they say, one day better. Does it make Oklahoma even more impressive because Oklahoma has so much pressure, so many expectations on them as the reigning champions, so many times in a row, compared to like what happened to Cal. They always show up. They don't have bad meets.
Yeah, and if they do, it's early in the season.
Yeah.
You don't see them have meltdowns at championships, really. I mean, the closest, I think, was championships last year, where they had, like, some significant wobbles on beam and some things, and it was believable that you could have had Florida as the champion, but they didn't have problems. There weren't major errors. I think if you're any other team, like, what is Oklahoma doing in terms of pressure sets and training for pressure meets is... something you'd want to copy. Send some spy cameras in there, see what they're doing, because it's clearly working, because they don't have those same... And we should say, Cal didn't have, like, a bad competition.
No.
They were just a little off. They weren't like, oh, we fell apart and cried through the meet. It was like, oh, we're pressing. Our landings aren't, we're not sticking enough, kind of thing.
Yeah. Whereas Oklahoma hasn't lost a home meet in 10 years. It's just, I think there are things about what I think part of it is recruiting what Oklahoma does, because if you're going to Oklahoma, the expectation is you go there to win. Like, you also might do some school. There are doctors that have come out of the Oklahoma gymnastics program, but that this is the expectation. Like, you better enjoy winning as the focus in your life and be that kind of athlete, because that's the expectation. Yeah.
That's another. Okay. Go ahead.
Is it going to be more impressive? There's nothing unimpressive about Oklahoma or any of the teams that have won. But if a school like Cal wins, is it going to be more impressive because their academics are so much harder? It's so much harder to get in. Like Stanford has won for the men and the men's college teams. I feel like that's incredibly impressive to have to go to that kind of school with those kind of demands and win a championship. I mean, there's hardly any men's gymnastics teams left, but so there's less competition, but in numbers terms. But Cal's no freaking joke.
I think it's so person dependent. It's so what your major is, what classes you're taking, what's natural for you, what's easy for you, what's not, that it's very difficult for me to make a wide categorization about a school or whether their academics are harder or not.
If everyone is a communications major?
Well, it super depends on the school and the major and what you're doing and how, what class. Yeah, all of that. It's so dependent. And you will have people who, despite the reputation of Stanford, you will have people on the Stanford team who are putting in way less work than people on the, and the University of Florida kind of has an unfair reputation, I think, academically for being like the school that Ryan Lochte went to.
Because their football program literally just let them do. I mean, this is well documented.
Which is there are problems. There are also great academic things about the University of Florida. It's a huge university. It runs the gamut, all of that. But so I don't think you can say it's not necessarily the Stanford gymnast versus the Florida gymnast, that the Stanford gymnast has a harder time academically or is working harder or has more demands upon them academically. It's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
It really depends on the person.
Except Leanne Long and her pre-med major and her CEO business.
Well, yeah.
And buying houses on the side.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Some people, it's the person more so than the school.
Yeah.
Is what I would say.
Yes, this reminds me of how the people that were really good at statistics and math would always have me do the talking. Because I was like, this is easy. Yeah. Just tell me the stuff and I'll just do your presentation part for you. And for them, they were about to die. And I was like, easy A. Just feed me the words. This is why drama class in high school changed my life. Everyone had to take it. I was terrified to speak in public before that. Were you ever terrified to speak in public?
No. I'm just terrified of everything else.
Yeah, I understand. I get it.
Yeah.
How, speaking of being terrified of things, I have worries about the Florida floor lineup, and I would like to know what we as a family are going to do to fix it.
Yeah, we talked about Cal. Florida had a similar performance in that they didn't live up to their potential and had a similar score to Cal. Different in that they have options to change the lineups. With Cal, it was like more or less like, those are the people. Those are your best ones. You're just going to focus on, sticking some more landings before regionals. But with Florida, it's like, yeah, do you reconstruct that floor lineup that got a 49-1 and kind of was the event that took them out of it? Because there should be other options. I mean, some people are injured. We saw Peyton Richards get injured and we haven't seen her since then. So then we don't know who's dealing with like nagging things that are impeding their training in the gym, but it's not like the injury that can affect.
But I mean, this is regionals.
Have other people.
You got to have your final lineup by regionals, because you could end up not going. Like, that's a real possibility for Florida.
Yeah,
they could, by their regional, they could end up not qualifying. Which, for the excitement of gymnastics, I love that. I want to feel like anyone can get knocked out at any time, no matter their ranking, which is legit, because except Oklahoma, if you count a fall, that could be you. Except if you have 9.
Except Oklahoma on conference championships was 9/10 better than it was, almost 2 falls better than any other team.
They're like Simone. They're a quarter of a Simone vault ahead of everyone else. That's how good they are, which is insane in a sport with a capped total at 10. That you can be that far ahead is just like a testament to the little things. Are you on your highest toe? That's what it all goes back to. Are you releve as fuck? That is basically what I think it says. All the teams have like something in the locker room that motivates them, and that's
no regrets. And then there's just, are you releve as fuck? Or remember that time Spencer wrote that Oklahoma might not win this year. That's what's in the locker room. That's
definitely what they have now. Prove Spencer wrong is what they have like written on their tape. Oh my god, I would love that so much if that was it. What I think Florida needs to do with their floor lineup is get a better collective and have more money and recruit.
And be like, hey, the people,
have any
how LSU has 19 people on this team who can all get a 995 on floor? Can we have some of them?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because like when it comes down to when you have a bunch of people that are hurt, which look at what's happening to Michigan. They've won a national championship. Florida's won a national championship. You need the depth of a whole bunch of other people who can come in and just get a minimum of a 995. That's
I think the thing with Florida's floor right now is there are other choices of people who could go who have also gotten like 985 and 9875. No one has really emerged as like, oh my god, you have to take my 995. And I think that's where the day-to-day being in the gym, but also the coaching instincts come in, where you have to know your athletes and kind of know you're the one who's going to show up when it's regionals and people are screaming at home and there's a lot of pressure, and you're the one who's going to rise to the occasion and get the highest score you've ever gotten, versus I'm worried you're going to get too nervous and you're going to cut off all your movements and maybe not have your best routine. And that's where the kind of what it takes to be a top coach comes in, that you can make those decisions and they're correct. And the athletes well enough to be able to do that.
Yep.
And so we don't know. We will see about Florida's floor lineup, but I think there's reason to make adjustments.
Yes. We have not talked a lot about Utah, and Utah won their conference. So I just want to discuss Utah a little bit. One of the most impressive moments for me with Utah was when Maile of the 10s, Maile of the most enormous double front. So good. So she goes on low bar. She's just supposed to do cast pirouette so she can do her releases and get back to the high bar, but she goes over. So she does cast handstand, half pirouette, another half pirouette, and then has to repeat her cast half turn to get to the high bar. And it was so seamless. Like, unless you knew like her compulsory, bars, which is basically everyone's doing the same bar construction, I don't think you would have registered that she made a mistake. But I was like, oh. But she covered it beautifully. And added difficulty.
Her accidental extra half turn was the best completed full turn vertical position of conference championships.
It's so true.
Because lots of people do their giant full on the high bar, and you're like, pretty late. She did an accidental cast full on the low bar, and it was perfect.
Yep.
In terms of vertical, there were deductions, yes, but yes, it was a very impressive save.
Maile also got did she get a 10 on beam? She got a 10 on beam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There seemed to be a little wobbly poo deduction that should have been taken in that from where I was sitting, but do you remember?
Where you were sitting? You were at home.
I was sitting on my couch looking at the TV, and
from my seat in the arena, I thought there was a wobble. Like, you were sitting at the same place everyone was sitting, which is watching the camera angle. Yeah, again, it's one of those when you have when you're Reagan Smith getting a 10, Maile O'Keefe getting a 10 on beam. There's a range, there's a spectrum of the quality of 10s. This one was not necessarily the 10iest one, I would say, of Miley's career.
I think you have summed up the problem with NCAA judging in that NCAA judging is a spectrum, and it's not supposed to be a spectrum. It's supposed to be very fucking precise. Not a spectrum.
Yeah. I think it's very another thing that I'm interested in, how a team takes what happened at conference championships and reacts to it with Utah, is those first 3 beam routines. Because that was one of the most surprising things at Pac-12 championships. So Emily Morgan fell, and then they had 2 9.7s after that. And we've gotten used to Utah beam over the last, solid handful of years being their best event, being, it's the Maile show, but also they've had a lot of other strong beamers as well, getting huge scores. Not the same lineup this year, but that is another thing that if Cal had the meet, they would have pounced all over that. Just no one was able to take advantage of that. But it's still, while winning, there are things that they will look to improve. I think the same is true for LSU. Good meet, enough to win the competition. Their best meet, definitely not. Top half, maybe, but only that. And I think that's maybe another thing that makes Oklahoma's performance so impressive. They were really the only team, the only conference winner among the major conferences that I thought was really on. Like on at conference championships. A lot of other teams showed that this is week 12 and we've been going nonstop, and we really are looking forward to next weekend not having any meets before regionals.
Yeah. Let us discuss.
With LSU, I do want to say a little bit more about LSU winning, because
that's right. Oh my God. Yeah. I was trying to write down, did we talk about OU, Utah, MSU? Okay, LSU, yes.
Yeah. Because it was very much the kind of performance where there were things, that landing is not as controlled as you usually do. There's this area here. Aaliyah Finnegan's going to do the silliest inbound save on floor, somehow staying in bounds, doing like an entire improvised floor choreography to stay in bounds, had a wobble on beam, those kinds of things. But you also had what was reinforced was how much you can rely on Haley Bryant to just be like, I'm Haley Bryant. I can save any lineup. I can get any score. And, Leanne Wong, I think, did the same thing for Florida in terms of saving lineups. But it was just like, I'm going to get the scores every time. Even, I'm not going to stick my vault and still get a 9.975, and we have some issues. But great routines, hitting routines. And with Konnor McClain, I think she was the other one who was like, she was in her first pressure championship meet as a college gymnast in a team environment. And she did great routine. I mean, exactly. She did her normal. It's her normal for Konnor. It's what we've seen her do on beam and floor basically almost every time as a college gymnast. It's a 10 on beam, but that she was able to have, maybe the calmest or most and even keeled, I can handle this moment performance, I think will be very encouraging for LSU as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, we know that Konnor can hit when she's feeling good, and she has that capability. She's the U.S. national champion. So, she can do it. Maybe it is because she's just like still has that look on her face. Like, this is so easy, you guys. This is a joke. Like, are you guys? I'm trying not to laugh at everybody who's so excited about these easy ass skills that I've been doing, like compulsory since I was like 6. But I enjoyed it so much. Okay, opportunities for comedy. The most important part of conference
the most
championship.
important part of Michigan State winning the Big Ten championship was the moment. Okay, so you know how the sports balls will have like the big tub of Gatorade that they like pour over the coach or whatever. Gymnastics was never, because can you imagine? This is totally inappropriate and unacceptable. But they had, I think the plan was to have like a Gatorade thing full of confetti, but either it spilled or they went too early. So then by the time the person holding it got to Mike Rowe to put it over his head, there was literally one sad confetto that came out and just like dripped onto his shoulder and came off. They were all too happy to even notice, but it was hilarious looking. And it was just like, oh, if the context were different, that would be the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. Just this one little like dribbling down, like, hooray. Maybe it already knew what their regional drop was going to be. The confetti knew and was like, oh no,
sad.
Hold it, because you got a bad draw.
My moment of comedy, or just like artistry brilliance. I mean, we did start the season with talking about actresses and assassins. Oklahoma, full of assassins. A team like UCLA, Michigan State, Sac State, the West Coast.
West Coast teams like Michigan State. You should make the geographical placements for the regionals draw.
Full of actresses is the point.
Yeah.
So Caitlin Rosen, as we know, has dreamed of having a UCLA flow routine her whole life, born to be a Californian, basically. Because what I've learned from you listeners is that everyone thinks that California is still like woo-woo and weird. But I did not see it that way. We had a long discussion about this on College and Cocktails, because I was like, wait, are the West Coast teams weirder and like more artsy-fartsy?
And everyone was like, yes.
I was like, duh.
Obviously.
But see, growing up in Pennsylvania to the parents of like some converted hippies and going to Quaker school, this was not my experience of being a Pennsylvanian in, my family. And yet, so anyway, the point of this, Caitlin Rosen, born for this, concocted a different stick celebration for herself for every single routine she did. Stuck landing, bowling ball strike. Stuck landing, salutes. She was just, she's my Roman Empire of what you should do after you stick and what the FIG needs to allow in competition. Oh, the NCAA can influence anything in the FIG and elite. This is what it needs to do.
She's been very impressive in terms of Caitlin Rosen is very much in the actress's assassin spectrum. She's an actress, but she competes with the solidity of an assassin. And that's been what's most impressive about Caitlin Rosen, because she is like a performer doing UCLA all over UCLA, but usually, like oftentimes over the history of the years, we've seen many gymnasts go to UCLA because they dreamed about being a UCLA gymnast, and they're beautiful and they're artistic and we're so excited to see them, and then they fall on like half their routines. Like how many gymnasts have we seen like that? Caitlin Rosen is hitting and has saved the team on many occasions this season.
She is the freshman savior of the program. All right. Corrupt or correct? That's what we're asking you guys. Okay. So I would like to compare the vaults of Selena Harris, Jordan Bowers, and Cammie Winger. Utah.
Okay.
So only Jordan Bowers got a 10. Selena Harris got a 9975. Cammie Wenger a 9925, which means that someone gave a 10 to all of these gymnasts. A lot of people gave
a
a 10 to Jordan
9925
Bowers.
does not necessarily mean that. I haven't looked at the judges splits, but
okay.
a 9925 would be a 9.0 and a 995 average. But yeah,
Okay.
but go on. But go on.
Okay. So let's start with Selena Harris. My contention is once again that it is not a 10 because she has a great amplitude, great stick. She's an amazing vaulter. She's super consistent. She has pike tips. She has a hip angle. It's a layout. That's a deduction. You cannot get a 10 on that. So once again is like she keeps getting 10s and I'm like, it's super obvious that she is piked in this. And piked is an extreme way to say it, but a hip angle is a hip angle. Jordan Bowers, same thing. Hip angle and bent legs in her vault. Both are happening. The beginning of it, when she first takes off first half twist, straight as an arrow. The second half of it, both are bent. Sticks, she's amazing. Obviously, you guys, it's Jordan Bowers. Like, she's incredible. But it's very clear it's not a 10. She does the same vault every week. Cammie Wenger from Utah. Incredible stick. And we couldn't see this on the broadcast of Pac-12s had the freaking, as usual, Pac-12s doing the least. They had the worst.
It's done now. It's over now. It's the last one.
Finally.
Utah closed the door. They were like, we won the last Pac-12. Slam. We couldn't see because everything was from the side, but on some of the videos that the teams put up of themselves, you can see much better what was happening. And Cammie Wenger, same thing, a little more bent and a little more pike, but also a 9925. So, Spencer, have I made my point about vault here? That is, if your point is just like all of these scores are too high, then you've made your point. If you have more specifics, you may continue to make your point.
The scores are too high. The rent is too high. The scores are too high, Spencer. These have obvious deductions you can see in real time, and the stick does not erase them.
So my question is, so for both Selena Harris and Jordan Bowers, I would say the deductions that you were pointed out exist, and they are the most minimal, though. That should be the smallest deduction you can take for that fault should be taken there. I think one of the things we see is a default to, oh, there was an error, take an 05. Oh, there's an error, take an 05. And you can have the smallest little knee softness, like Jordan Bowers has, and you can have tuckathon, like some other people have, and it feels like they're like, the solution is we won't deduct for Jordan Bowers at all because it's just a little bit, and then we'll take an 05 for when it's bad, rather than an 05 when it's a little bit, and then let's talk about 1/10, 1.5, 2/10 for when it's bad, and that we need to just shift the expectation by a 0.5. So everything that you're saying, oh, I can see a little bit of softness, but it's not enough to deduct, that becomes an 05. And every 05 becomes, oh, that's a really obvious deduction, 10th. I think that would help a lot.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that for me, these are ranked incorrectly. The way that, and when people talk about, oh, well, it doesn't matter as long as people are ranked, right? I feel like Jordan Bowers and Selena Harris basically should have the same score, which neither should have gotten a 10, because soft knees is a deduction, because that's bent knees, and bent knees is a mandatory deduction. And so I think that a 9.95 for those vaults would be acceptable. I would give it a 9.9 because I would take a full 10th, but that's how I feel it should be.
You said for Selena Harris, you have hip angle. For Jordan Bowers, you said you had hip angle and soft knees. So by the way you described them, I would have assumed that you would have Selena Harris 9.95, Jordan Bowers 9.9, Cammie Wenger like 9.8.
Well, here's the thing. I think Selena Harris probably bends her knees too, but I can't quite tell from this angle if she does.
Okay.
But I think she does. I think she has it. But I feel like I'm giving, benefit to the athlete. But yes, you're right. I am contradicting myself because now I'm going back and thinking about it. The first time I saw it, I was like, everything's bent. Everything's bent. Hips and knees. So, but I would put them the same. But yes, I see your point.
Yeah. Why I was thinking about that specifically was the worst mistake I made of the past week was going back and watching the NCAA judges instructional video about beam wobbles and what they're told they're supposed to take, which is, once again, a very helpful video. And if you're really into it, I would recommend watching it. It will not improve your enjoyment of college gymnastics because you will see exactly what they've been told to take that they're not taking. But there were even examples in that video where they were listing 3 deductions in a wobble. They'll be like, okay, leg leaves the beam, arm circle, turn to the side. We are taking for all 3 of those things. Those are all part of a wobble. So we decided to take a 10th. And I'm like, the smallest deduction is 0.5, and you just listed 3 things. How did you get to a 10th? What did you decide was combined as one deduction, or what was not enough to be a deduction? And that's the level of more specificity, even in the educational materials, that I'd like to see for NCAA judging, which is not just, okay, so we saw these 3 or 4 things and we decided to take a 10th. But like, okay, specifically, what was it an 0.5 for this? What was the 0.5 for this for? What was this? Like, more differentiation and more specificity, I think, would be helpful.
And what I'm hearing from coaches is it's not just, it used to be the developmental, what used to be called like the level system, level 1 through 10. That used to be super strict. Like, there weren't a lot of judging problems. But now there's even 10s in dev and level 10, level 9 that aren't 10s. And it's spreading. Basically, we want the college post-stick celebrations to spread to FIG, but we do not want the not real scores to spread downwards to the dev program. What the solution to all of this, obviously, Spencer, is a judge's camera. And finally, some geniuses have come up with exactly what we need. So, Spencer, will you describe what you see on the screen that I'm showing to you right now?
There is a gentleman with a doodly-doo on his eyelid, and it has a cable coming out of it to another thing on his temple. That's what we're seeing on the screen.
It is a camera on your eyelid. And the camera, and basically his eyelid doesn't close all the way. And I think it actually goes into his, it's like a contact on his eye too. And I'm saying that because his eye is blinking. But Blink Energy's AR lens. This is what we need. Blink Energy. We would like a sponsorship so that we can get the judges to actually wear this. Get in touch with us. That's what we want. Let's promote this for everyone. We can also have it in law enforcement. We can have it like all over the place. This is great. Journalists can go in, record in real time what's happening. This is so great. I mean, they'll take away your phone, but are they going to take the contact lens out of your eyeball? I think not, you guys. This is how we are going to fix the world. Spencer, how dare you roll your eyes at me?
Jessica's going to bring about the end of the end times.
You wanted a judge's cam. This is the perfect. But I mean, you got to take it out when you go to the bathroom, or like be able to turn it off or something. You know what I mean? Or like your conversation.
You're already finding the problems.
You boop the side of your head to turn it off. You boop the side of your head to turn it on. Or it just automatically goes on. Anyway, this is the technology, guys, that I'm very, very excited about. I mean, Fujitsu's probably already got this all geared up for the judges to wear. I'm sure Nellie Kim has tested it already. You guys, let us know what you think. Judges, would you wear this? Only send in positive emails, please, to balancebeamsituation.com. Okay. All right. I want to talk about Gymternet news. And this week's Gymternet news, Spencer, is brought to us by Gold Level Club Gym Nerd member, Allie's #1 fan. And so it's an enthusiasm meter. And the enthusiasm reads as follows. Allie's 2016 all-around Olympic final is my Roman Empire. I love that. I love it so much. If you would like to sponsor a segment like this with a Rage-O-Meter or an Enthusiasm-O-Meter, you can do so by joining Club Gym Nerd at the gold level at GymCastic.com. Spencer, what is your Roman Empire?
I don't understand the question.
It's what you think about like several times a week.
Oh.
Of course you don't know what your Roman Empire is, because this is like there's a social media thing asking men what you think about, how many times you think about the Roman Empire, and men were like, oh, a couple times a week. I have to say I do think about the Roman Empire a lot because I keep thinking about the fall of the Roman Empire, and once the Kardashians became popular, I was like, this is our downfall is coming.
So the Kardashians are your Roman Empire.
No, the Roman Empire is my Roman Empire, but in gymnastics, my Roman Empire. So what's your gymnastics Roman Empire?
Let's see. Like, Courtney Kupets's Omelyanchik as a college gymnast.
Oh.
I think about that a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I thought it would be like Amy Chow's bars.
I guess my more honest answer is like when the 96 team had to do the Macarena at the gala. I think about that a lot. I think about Christy Phillips's Reese's Cup performance about the Vietnam War a lot. Okay. I think these are my answers. Those are the things I think about the most.
Yeah. I'm going to have to pay attention to what I think about it most, because you know that my brain is like an array. It's a rainbow. It's a spectrum of activity with many thoughts happening at once about gymnastics. Okay, Spencer, have you ever thought about this? Athletes.
I can't answer that until you ask me what I have ever thought about.
Athletes have to pay taxes on their NIL income. But the NCAA doesn't. Fair? Scott? Yeah.
No. You just asked me a question about the NCAA and then asked me if it was fair. No, it's not fair.
So the Indianapolis Star has a writer called Scott Hedge, and he did an opinion piece this week, which is just the greatest thing I've ever seen. He had, there's a forensic accountant named Serena Mornes, who went through the NCAA's tax returns and found that they had accumulated over $13.6 billion in total 2022 revenue. None of it is taxable because the NCAA is a nonprofit. Just like the mega churches that are also nonprofits. So his contention is, if the athletes have to pay income on their NIL, then also the NCAA should have to pay taxes on that $13.6 billion in revenue that they made in 2022. Like an organization like USA Gymnastics, their overwhelming goal is to get people to participate in gymnastics at the grassroots level. Like that's most of their membership. That's really what they do. The very minimal top is the elite stuff that we see. The NFL dropped their nonprofit status in 2015, but the NCAA still hasn't. Do you think this is going to change?
If someone forces them to.
Yes. How do we do that?
Only if the Congress, like that's the only way that would happen.
Yeah, I think that's what needs to happen. You know, there is at least one Supreme Court member who has had it with the NCAA, so that could help, possibly. Spencer, did you see what the Horkina of rhythmic gymnastics, Irina Viner, who is head of the Russian Rhythmic Federation and supervillain, said about the Olympics and why the Russian gymnasts will not be participating in the Paris Olympics?
I did not see this. Do I want to know?
Oh, it's so good. She said, so just so we're clear, everybody knows that the Russia's not invited to the Olympics because of the war in Ukraine. So our rhythmic gymnastics team, coaches and athletes have been clear from the start. They refuse to perform under a neutral flag or comply with extensive requirements that dilute their national identity. That is her story, and she's sticking by it. I mean, Viner, she always brings the quotes. Do you think that she taught Horkina, like they learned from the same school? Like they send Putin, Horkina, and Viner all to the same school of public.
I mean, I don't know, but they definitely have, I think they probably get along.
They both have I know how to turn this.
Or they are arch nemesis.
Oh, that would be the
because
best.
They're the same. Because that's also
they are.
That's
they probably hate each other.
Two sides of the same coin.
Can you just see Horkina throwing her red phone right at Viner?
Yes, I can envision that.
Yeah, this is now my Roman Empire.
That's you asked me what my Roman Empire is. That's Horkina pretending to have that phone conversation in that Olympic Channel documentary.
That is the best thing ever. More Olympic news. The IOC has banned Russia and Belarus from the opening ceremonies. They're basically banned totally from competing because no one can meet their criteria, but now they're also banned from the opening ceremony. So
those who are approved to compete as neutrals won't walk in the opening ceremony, or
they will float.
Well, you float. You don't walk in the opening ceremony anyway. You float in the opening ceremony.
You can watch with the commoners on a hill by the river or whatever it's called. Most importantly, in Olympic news,
you can watch with the gymnasts because they have to compete like the next second.
Right. The Paris condom report is out, Spencer, and by the condom report, God. I mean it's not like what flavors they're going to have or anything like that. It's just how many they're supplying. There will now be 300,000 condoms for the Paris athletes. That's like double Tokyo, but less than Rio. Only 300,000.
I mean, always be safe. I feel like that seems like too many. I'm better safe than sorry. I'm just like, I think you over purchased. I think you went to Costco and you got excited and you over purchased on condoms.
I feel like they reduced the number. I mean, basically, everyone's going to take one just as a souvenir, and then you have to have ones for people to actually use. That's the thing. There's 10,000 athletes in Paris, so I mean,
30 per person.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because you'll have people that are actually going to use them, or like can't get them easily. So you have the souvenirs, and then you have the ones who are like, "Oh, I'm going to stock up right now." And then if you know it's an Olympic,
you also have athletes who are bringing their own because of they want to trust it or they have a brand that they like.
Yes. So. I mean, this is the thing. You can't have the spermicide. Oh, that's the worst. So yeah. But the thing about it is like if it's an Olympic condom, then you know at least it's new. It hasn't been like rotting in someone's wallet for like 7 years and it's gonna like poof into dust the minute it's used. Which is there are
a lot of moving parts in this conversation.
The most important thing for you to know
I would like you to make a flow chart for me. Positives and negatives. I would like you to come up with your estimate of how many would be an appropriate number.
Like for me personally, I was single,
for the athletes,
for the athletes.
For the athletes, I want to know what you think.
There are a lot of Olympic pregnancies. You would be surprised by the number. I think this is the secret plan for why they actually finally made them gender equal, is to create the superhumans all over the planet. Okay, so the most important thing about the Olympic condoms, Spencer, is that the French, being the French, are meeting all of our expectations, and the Athlete Village director Michaud, gave some excellent quotes. And his first quote is about the condoms. It's very important that the conviviality here is something big.
Mm-hmm. It's being friendly.
Right, exactly. They want to create some places where athletes would feel very enthusiastic and comfortable. Mm-hmm.
So they want it to be good.
Right.
not just perfunctory.
Right. I really want Reese from Ireland, Palma Horse Reese, who did his jumping on the cardboard beds in Tokyo to see if they could withstand the rigors of sexual activity, to also work this into going viral again for the Paris Olympics. Reese, we're depending on you. I know you can do it. Okay. We have one piece of feedback this week to get to. Gymnastics March Madness bump from Holly and Colin.
Holly and Colin say, I love the show. It's the highlight of my week. My husband did a March Madness sports balls bracket for work because the money goes to charity. We know nothing about basketball, so we based our picks on schools with good gymnastics teams. We're currently in first place. My husband is an actuary, so probably none of his colleagues know anything about basketball either. But still, our gymnastics knowledge is coming in handy. Thank you for all you do to make a great show every week.
Hooray! Oh, this is the best news ever when your gymnastics knowledge can make you win at any sports ball things. Remember, we will see you guys on Friday for Behind the Scenes at noon Pacific. Make sure to get your in-person live show tickets for NCAAs April 19th. It's going to be super fun. You don't want to miss this guest or guests going to have a lot to say. So thank you so much for listening. Remember to set your podcast player to download wherever you are. And until next week, remember to take off on gay, split on rights, and we'll see you on Friday for Behind the Scenes, noon Pacific. Thanks for listening.